Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, April 10th, 2018, and you know what that means? It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 64 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me. Return of the Mac once again. I decided to switch it up. The miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, how you been, buddy? What's up?
Been good. It's been a fantastic week. Something that I wish I had drawn attention to last week is if you look at the chair behind me.
The one you're sitting in?
Yes, the one I'm sitting in. It might look a little bit like a car chair, like a seat from a car, and that's because it absolutely is.
That's awesome.
I took a chair out of a car and put it in, mounted it to a thing. So now I've got a really comfortable seat that I didn't have to spend tons of money for. And those chairs that you see everybody, that you see like streamers that they have.
Yeah, the gaming chairs.
Yeah, the gaming chairs. They just really look uncomfortable. And they're like $500 a pop. So like, nope. I know what's comfortable. I know what I've driven across the country sitting down in. So I'm going to go with what I know works.
Now, here's my question. How do you drive the car now? He's not even going to dignify that with a response. I had to ask, man. I had to ask. You pull a seat out of your car, you're now less a seat in your car.
No. I took it out of a different car.
I assumed.
But yeah, no, it's a good thing to ask. Let's see what else. What else have we got going on? Let's see. Oh yeah. I've got a thing this weekend, an astronomy event.
Nice, man. Where at?
Just here locally.
Nice.
And it's going to be Harry Potter themed,
Dude.
So that should be cool. But I've been doing a lot of prep work for that. And gosh, apart from that, just kind of the usual stuff. I've been working on reverse engineering this thing. I know I've talked about it a bunch of times. This motorcycle ignition circuit.
Yeah.
And anyway, I've made some progress. It does look like I'm going to have to either cozy up. I'm going to have to decap the integrated circuit, so that'll be fun. But that's kind of that's kind of the nature of exploring and learning new stuff. You get to try out some crazy things and see if maybe you blow stuff up.
Dude, decapping integrated circuits is not for the weak of heart, so I'm excited to hear how that goes. Also, at some point, you'll have to explain to me what that means.
So, within the electrical terminology, you'd think it's like removing a capacitor, right? Because
Sure.
Capacitor, but no, it's not. So, like this black square that's got the integrated circuit on it, just this little bit. It's epoxy, but when you remove that. That's called decapping, removing the epoxy. So like the integrated circuit has no information on it, like at all. Nobody's got a specification sheet. It's basically a black box, for lack of a better word, as to how it works. So the only thing you can really do to figure it out will be to take it apart and use a microscope and look at the die, look at the actual physical hardware inside to reverse engineer how it works. But yeah, so that's what I'm gonna try doing.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Mac is one of the most creative people I know, so I'm hyped to hear that you're doing all kinds of cool creative stuff. Speaking of hanging stuff on the wall, if you guys have been watching, were you done, by the way, Mac? Were you done?
Just for those of you who haven't been following, I tend to make the perlers and hang them on the wall. That's how we got from creative to hanging on the wall.
Yeah,
just letting you know.
He showed us a shot of stuff he's hung up. So I'm starting to get my office back in order because I rearranged it. And I was previously streaming with this side wall behind me. So all my posters, Overwatch posters, Halo posters, stuff is on that wall. So I'm slowly starting to move stuff to the wall behind me and make this more like a studio again. So you can see I moved my Marvel little metal comic book covers behind me, and slowly I'll move everything else over. So trying to give you guys some more eye candy other than just my face for when I'm doing the show. And
Mr. Nice Guy's face is all the eye candy we need.
Chocolate eye candy, baby. But anyways, so the recording is 17 days away. I'm really, really excited for that. My wife, Mrs. Nice Girl, and I are getting excited for that trip, and I've been preparing, hitting the stages, and everything has been written and is set. But, you can never get too much practice, Max. So that's what I've been doing. I had a killer show this weekend at a place called Cigars and Stripes Barbecue. I will perform anywhere, man. And it was a showcase. They gave me a lot of stage time, so I ran through. I'll have to show. I need to show audio to you guys because I actually had a really, really good set, and had a heckler. So that was fun. It flexed the comedy muscles a little bit. And
can we hear some more about the heckler?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, I guess you'd call it the feature. So I was doing about 20, 25 minutes, and I was going on right before the guy who was headlining. And right before I go up, the host says to the audience, he says, listen, you guys need to stop talking so much because some of these are legitimately good comedians. And if you don't stop, they'll tear you apart. And so I get up there and it's a weird venue. Like you're right next to the bar. And then there's some audience that's literally right next to you as you're performing on a very small stage. So this one guy kept chiming in, and I finally just said, hey, man, do you want to switch places? Because you seem like you're really much better at comedy than me. And he was like, oh, this is my usual comedy spot. Comics like when I talk. And so maybe I'll tell you after the show, but I kind of had to embarrass him in front of his date a little bit. And and the audience was on my side, so it was a good experience. But we ended friends. My personality on stage is one that's very likable, so I try not to hurt people's feelings, even when they're a little bit out of line. So, anyway, Mac. On that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right into the gaming news, my friend. What do you think?
I think we must.
Welcome, for those of you who are here live, to Two Nerds in a Pod, episode number 64, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. We're 64% of the way to 100, Mac. Not a lot of gaming news that I wanted to share this week, but we'll hit some of the big stuff. First news story, Mega Man X Legacy Collections are coming in July with a new mode. This is on Game Informer. It says, for the 30th anniversary of Mega Man later this year, Capcom is bringing all the Mega Man X games to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on July 24th. The catalog is split up, of course, over two titles, Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 and 2. The first collection encompasses Mega Man X through X4, while the second contains X5 through X8, and the retail version is a 2-disc bundle. I may have to get the retail version if I pick this up. Both come with new X Challenge mode featuring battles against two bosses from different X titles simultaneously and more. And then they have a video. Mac, question number 1, are you picking this up? Question number 2, what do you think about this new mode?
Okay.
And as a point of reference, you guys, I don't know anyone who is more into Mega Man than Mac, so his opinion here is very valid.
Okay, so let's talk Mega Man Legacy Collection 1. Back before there was a Mega Man Legacy Collection 2. That was Mega Man's 1 through 6. The collection was put together with a lot of love, and it turned out fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 was done by Capcom when they realized that there was a market for a Legacy Collection in this day and age. And it was not done as well. For example, Legacy Collection, the first Legacy Collection was it was about as close to frame perfect accuracy as you could possibly get, because the company that did it had a very fierce dedication to the craft.
It was fierce.
Yes, it really was. And so Legacy Collection 2, however, was thrown together by Capcom when they realized that there was some money to be made, and they did not put very much love into it. A good example is that coming from a speedrunner, a friend of mine, Robo Ridley, and friend of the streams, who speedruns Mega Man 9, there is a additional delay of like fairly noticeable, almost a full second at the beginning of each level. And that's kind of tip of the iceberg. He sort of refunded his purchase when he found that, because it's like, he's like, yeah, no point in getting this because he's got it on Wii, Mega Man 9. And there are some issues with several other of the things. Now, one thing that is kind of nice about Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 is that the extra challenges that they worked in are a little bit more reasonable for filthy casuals such as myself.
Extra challenges, get it?
Yes, there are extra challenges on it, like challenge things where you beat all of the robot masters with Buster only, for example. Anyway, I go on that long thing just to mention that this Mega Man X Collections 1 and 2 being released by Capcom, I am very cautious because the last time they did a collection of games, they left a few things to be desired. It wasn't as good as it could have been if they had actually tried. As was, they just kind of threw it together and, slapped a coat of paint on it and sent it off. Sure. I'm concerned that what we're going to get here is something that doesn't have much love put into it. It'll have a lot of, hey, we need to get this out. Another thing I'm disappointed about is that it doesn't include there were two Mega Man X games that could have been included. One of them, because Mega Man X isn't very much my series, but I have played a lot of those games. It was Maverick Hunters, I want to say, was one of them, and there was another one that they didn't include in this. Okay. So it's kind of an oversight, really. At this moment in time, that's where my hang-ups are. So I'm sorry to take all this time to go on and on about it, but there we go.
Now, what do you think? What do you think about the new mode that's going to have two bosses at once? You think that's just a gimmick, or do you think that actually has some potential?
It might be interesting.
And they're bosses from different games, which I think is interesting. Now, I will say that I'd put Mega Man X, the first one, in my top 10 Super Nintendo games of all time. It's a fantastic game. I know if you're a purist like Mac, you really like the traditional Mega Mans as far as the Nintendo ones. But I really love Mega Man X2 and X3. So I hope that they don't have lag, like you're saying. I hope that they come out well. I am frustrated that they are doing it on two separate discs, so that if you buy it digitally, he has a Mega Man Perler. I don't understand why they're selling the digital version separately. I think they should have just sold them together. Maybe they're giving a discount. Who knows? I am hyped to play it on the Switch and play it portably. I think it'll be fun to relive that little bit of nostalgia. Mac, anything else you want to say about this?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts on the matter are just that I'm concerned that we're talking about a project that is really in a cash grab attempt rather than something that's going to be true to the material or that's going to be there. Because, I'm always glad to see re-releases of games, because that means that games that I love are more approachable for new people. I can be like, hey, you should play this series. And instead of being like, well, you need to go back and you need to buy the console and buy all the cartridges, anything that makes video games more accessible is good, in my opinion, even if I don't think it's the best. So yes, this is going to be, this could be good. This is probably going to be better than nothing. But at the same time, there's this part of me that's like, if you're going to do it right.
Well, and here's the thing too. I think it would have been cool if they could have made a new game in the Mega Man X style. Now granted, there are kind of two different Mega Man X styles. There's X1 through 3, which is the Super Nintendo, and then there's like X 4 through 8, which I believe are PlayStation graphics. So, but regardless, they've made Mega Man 10, Mega Man 9, and aren't they making Mega Man 11 right now?
Yes, they are working on Mega Man 11. It kind of feels a little bit like a cross between Classic and Mighty Number 9 from the looks of it. One thing, nope, getting off my high horse.
Mac is going to let it go. We're going to wait and see how it turns out. And so we'll leave it at that. Let us know in the chat if you're hyped for this new Mega Man collection that's coming out, or if you're just going to pass. This next news story comes from GameSpot, and this one got me super hyped, Mac, because it involves a game that I'm a little bit in love with. And we'll read the news story. It says, it has been nearly 5 years since the release of the last Splinter Cell game, 2013's Blacklist. That's part of what makes the sudden return of Sam Fisher in Ghost Recon Wildlands as part of a broader Splinter Cell-themed update so exciting. And while it's just nice to see Fisher back and Michael Ironside providing his voice, the update may hint at something more. After completing the update's new PvE mission, you'll get to see a cutscene, which is included in the video above on this GameSpot article. Fisher chats with the Ghost's handler, Karen Bowman, whom he apparently knows, referring to her as Linda. She says that Grimm, Fisher's ally and Grimm's daughter, sent word that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs says there's a possible empty quiver. I'm not going to read the whole article, but Sam Fisher is has made an appearance in this Ubisoft game, and I'm hyped about this. I love Splinter Cell. It has been 5 years. E3 is not that far away. I see no reason why Splinter Cell cannot come back. Now let's talk crossovers for a minute, Mac.
Okay, crossovers.
Because I know that you're not as into Splinter Cell as me, but what are your thoughts on?
It's hard for anyone to match your enthusiasm level
true.
For Splinter Cell.
It's
so
true.
please don't misunderstand.
I geek out, man. Now, what are your thoughts about crossovers? I mean, they happen in different types of media. They happen in like Marvel and DC and things like that. In fact, this new Avengers movie looks more like just one big crossover movie than it does an Avengers movie. What are your thoughts on characters being shared between different IPs like this? Are you a fan? Do you think it's overdone? What do you think, man?
I'm all right with it. I mean, I don't think I've seen a crossover event that has really made me, like, if I may.
Yeah.
I will say that you mentioned Avengers, and I'm sorry I have to say this, but just as an FYI to anybody out there who's wondering, characters from the already established same exact universe is not a crossover event. So the Avengers movie, it's not a crossover movie, No, they're all in the same. They're on the same thing. People call it a crossover event. And people even are like, most ambitious crossover event in history. It's like, do you know what a crossover event is?
Well, wait. What is your definition of a crossover?
A crossover event is characters from different IPs that don't share a universe.
So you don't consider, like, when Flash and Arrow team up, you don't consider that a crossover?
No, it's not a crossover. What? They're the same universe. They're the same. Canonically, they are the same universe, and they have been from the outset. So, I mean, it's only a crossover if we're, like, pulling in stuff from different universes. That's my take. Like, Mega Man, Sonic the Hedgehog. There was a crossover comic. They're from different universes. Bam. There we go. That's a crossover event. Or even across, like, times. I'll go with you on, like, times. Time traveling, pulling someone from a different... Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century, yeah, sure, there's a crossover. But, if they're not canonically in the same universe to start with, then we can talk crossovers. But to your point, Mr. Nice Guy, I'm very fine with crossovers. I just think we got to label them as such, because most of what we see and is labeled as crossovers aren't really crossovers.
So Mac just schooled me, and at first I was going to put up a fight, but I think he's actually 100% right about this in his definition of crossovers. So I'm going to let that go. I will say I'm a little concerned about the Avengers movie. Even though it's not video game related, I just think that there's too many type A personalities in that movie for it to really be successful and for them to get the stage time that they want. We have the Guardians of the Galaxy, we have Spider-Man, we have the Avengers, we have Doctor Strange, we have Ant-Man. I mean, we just have too many people fighting in a battle. I mean, it would just be absolute mayhem. We've seen how much damage the Avengers can do when they're just raiding a town, or not raiding a town, but trying to protect a town. So all these people together in the same movie battling, Captain America versus Iron Man, it's just too much to me. But we'll see how it turns out. Generally speaking, I'm a fan of crossovers when they are done well. So that's where I'll leave it. And someone, Galvatron just said in the chat here live, he said, Infinity War looks way overcrowded, and that's kind of how I feel about it too. So we'll see how it turns out. Regardless, as far as this crossover between between Splinter Cell and Ghost Recon, I'm hyped, and I really hope we get a new Splinter Cell game at E3. Let's do 2 more news stories, and then we'll move on. This next one is just kind of amusing to me. This is on GameRant.com. It says, in what seems to be a joke, a new ransomware has been discovered that will lock a user's files until they play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or even more simply, just enter a code into a field. When the user launches the ransomware, it encrypts every file and folder exclusively on the desktop and changes the file formats to .pubg. When it has finished encrypting the files, a screen will display 2 methods of decryption that the user can choose, depending on their sense of humor. It could be a joke or an attempt to keep the game alive after the sudden rise of another Battle Royale game, Fortnite, which was recently shown to make more money than PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds while still being free to play. I'm not a fan of viruses. I think it's not funny. But I think that this one is clever, and I think putting it on the computer of someone who's not a gamer would be even more funny. So that's my opinion on that. Not too much discussion to be had there, unless you want to say anything about that, Mac. Yeah, it's just kind of an amusing story. Our last news story of the day, I told you guys I decided to keep it kind of light, but I think that this next one will probably stimulate a really good discussion. This is on Game Rant as well. It says, Twitch streamer faces backlash over playing Fortnite with Jake Paul. Jake Paul and his brother have been the subjects of controversy for the past year, from sparking drama with his neighbors, harassing journalists, and using misleading thumbnails to get views. It's easy to say Jake Paul doesn't have a clean reputation within the YouTube community. However, it seems that Paul has been jumping on the Fortnite bandwagon, recently uploading content related to Epic Games' massive hit title. Twitch streamer Summit1G recently came under fire from his community after live streaming Fortnite with Jake Paul. The streamer's audience gave multiple and consistent complaints through the chat in regard to Paul's attendance, with Summit1G noting during the stream that he was, quote, a little disappointed in the chat, adding he thought that his chat was a little bit different. He ended mentioning that he thought some people had to get a little bit thicker skin. I'm not going to read too much into this. Suffice it to say that the gentleman, Summit1G, who is probably one of Twitch's biggest streamers, in fact he is facing some backlash for playing games with someone who's very controversial and does some things that are not liked by a lot of people. So, Mac, here's my question for you. And I think we may have even discussed this before. If we have, you can just say, Lam, I don't want to talk about this. But the company you keep, in related to gaming, in related to business, in related to Twitch, whatever it may be, can you be judged based on that? Can people be judged based on, who they game with, who they stream with, who they podcast with? What are your thoughts, man?
Well, I would hope so, because by podcasting with you, that takes me up a few notches.
Oh, thanks, man.
No problem. Honestly, I think, yeah, to a certain extent, if you want to associate with a certain person, and if you choose to do things with people that are not there, I mean, I get it. Everybody needs a friend, even people like Jake Paul. But I don't know. I would honestly, if I were watching his streams and that guy showed up, I would head the other way. I would judge him for it, and I would judge him by not coming round again, Just me. So I'm not going to get all high and mighty and say that I'd expect differently from other people than I would expect of myself.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I've thought about this a lot. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I will say this. I will say that in my life, it's hard for me to, let me put it this way, it's almost hard to articulate, you guys, and I'm a very articulate gentleman, so the fact that I'm tongue-tied right now shows how hard of a topic this is. If I know that someone holds views that I disagree with, I find myself uncomfortable if everyone else is okay with it. You know what I mean? So I get where his community is coming from. If they know that this Jake Paul guy is scumbaggish and is doing things that he shouldn't do, and then someone who they look up to is associating with him, it can definitely change their perception. And I don't think they need to get thicker skin. I think that they have the right to voice their concerns, and this applies to anything in life. You know what I mean? I will say that when it comes to things like politics, I think that we can and should associate with people who see the world differently than we do and who vote differently than we do, and we should have civil discourse. But it doesn't mean that you can't be opposed to who they're hanging out with. So that's kind of how I see it. Mac, any last thoughts, or should we move on, my friend?
No, let's move on.
All right, fantastic. And actually, that was our last news story of the week, so I'll turn it over to you, man.
All right. Well, Mr. Nice Guy, I hate to hit the same topic multiple times, but in 2003, you guys know what this is about. This is now gaming history.
You know what it is.
Strongly with 2003 Splinter Cell. The first Splinter Cell was released.
Love it.
So I know we've mentioned before that Mr. Nice Guy and I kind of stalked the Ubisoft people a little bit. The one time we went to E3 together, and we got Splinter Cell T-shirts. Got moved to the front of the line to watch gameplay from Splinter Cell Blacklist. And it was a great time. Mr. Nice Guy had that look about him that one only sees with children at Christmas type thing.
That's right.
When the magic is real and the presents really did come from Santa.
That's exactly right.
They always do come from Santa, just FYI. But I feel it in their bones.
Right,
and it's new and fresh and everything. That was Mr. Nice Guy. It was a wonderful sight to behold. And I mean, that was his feeling at this. I can only imagine what it was at the original Splinter Cell.
Well, you don't have to imagine, Mac, because I'm going to tell you.
Oh, goody. It's story time with Mr. Nice Guy, everyone.
Let's go back to 2003. It's also the year I graduated high school, even though I'm dating myself by saying that. So anyway, Splinter Cell... It's just a game changer, no pun intended. I think that the first one that I played, I actually ended up playing it on the GameCube. So it was not on the most normal controller, because the GameCube controller was very unique. But regardless, I had a great experience. And I remember Mac once telling a story on this podcast about how he played Resident Evil and how the music would scare him when he was a kid. So he would have to turn the music off. And Splinter Cell did the same thing for me. Now, I was not a kid when I played it, but anytime you're going through the game and there's quote-unquote bad guys and you're in the same area as them and they have detected you, the music speeds up. And because you're trying to be stealthy, they can sometimes sneak up on you without you knowing where they're at, and it's very, very, at the time, chilling when you get caught. So I would have to turn the music down and just wait until I got to a new area anytime I was detected. Great combat at the time, great stealth mechanics. You could interact with your environments, amazing stories, amazing voice acting. Michael Ironside did a fantastic job as Sam Fisher. Dennis Haysbert, if you watched 24, he was President Palmer on that show, did an amazing job of being I forget the name of the character actually, but did a great job. Just a brilliant game, cool gadgets, fantastic. 10 out of 10 in my book. That's my memories of it, Mac.
So to put you on the spot, have you gone back and played the original Splinter Cell recently, by chance?
Not recently. I did go back and play it. At one point, a high school friend of mine had a extra copy of Splinter Cell for PlayStation. Actually, it might have been for PlayStation, I believe, original, or PS2 maybe. And he gave it to me. And so at that point, I replayed it. But I have not played it in probably at least 10 years. I haven't played it, so all the way through.
I was going to ask how well it has held up, but
it hasn't.
We'll just assume that it's held up amazingly.
Well, as far as the fun factor, yes. As far as the graphics, not really. But they did do a Splinter Cell trilogy for PlayStation 3, and so people have had the opportunity to hop in if they had a PS3. So now, someone in the chat just said that Splinter Cell was okay, and they're about to get banned because that's blasphemy. There's no way that Metal Gear is better. And so many people say that to me. They say that Metal Gear is better, and it's not. It's a different beast. Splinter Cell is one of those games where I have constantly had to go through and find other stealth action games to hold me over until the new one comes out. Games like Dishonored, games like Deus Ex Human Revolution, which is also a fantastic series. So Splinter Cell to me is the definitive stealth action game and will continue to be forever. That's it for me, Mac.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move along to the next one that I actually find to be. We've been doing a lot of talk lately, about repackages for Final Fantasy, for Mega Man X series, original series, and this isn't the only one we're going to talk about because we're going to talk 2003. Released for the PlayStation, Final Fantasy Origins. So Final Fantasy 1 and 2 got released on PlayStation on the same disc, and not Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 2 for the Super Nintendo that we think of. That's Final Fantasy 4, but rather Final Fantasy 1 and 2 for the Nintendo. Final Fantasy 2 never saw a release here in the United States until Final Fantasy Origins, I do believe. But also what was kind of interesting about Origins was that it wasn't really just a simple re-release. They actually tinkered with some stuff. So for example, in the original Final Fantasy, you had spell levels, right? And you could buy 3 spells per level, so you had to economize a little bit, and you had a certain number of spells that you could cast from each level. So level 1, you always had the most amount, and as you leveled up, you would increase those spell levels, the number of times you could cast any spell from that level. So whereas you might be able to cast 9 castings of Cure, you could cast something like only 3 of Cure 2, or whatever. In Final Fantasy Origins release, they reworked it to be based on like magic points. So you didn't have a set number of times you could cast any one spell, but you had this pool of magic points that you could use in any of the ways. The other one that was really kind of interesting about it, and when you play the original, you kind of go back and play the original, you can purchase healing potions, but you can only purchase them one at a time from shops, which seems kind of crazy now. But little things like that. Not only was it they updated that so that you could buy multiples at once. So when they did this re-release, they kind of made it in some ways a bit of a fresh game. Now, we could go on for hours about whether you want to be truer to the source material, or whether you want to update things as interfaces and ideas and computing power becomes better. But there are objectively some changes that are worth making. Mm-hmm. And in general, when we're talking about re-releases, the Final Fantasy Origins re-release or update was definitely one of those things that I think we can solidly say is a re-release done right. So with all this talk about re-releases and things, that's just one that I wanted to highlight because it really was done right. The third thing I want to talk about is not so much a video game itself, but a notable spot in history for software in general. And that was April 7th, 1998. So a bunch of people, including Linus Torvalds, he's the one who's really credited for Linux and such. A bunch of these kind of early, I don't want to say early computer because it's really kind of early internet-ish era things. They got together and they figured out open source licenses. So you might know that you hop on something and you download something or you see something that's just like, this is an open source program with a Creative Commons license. Just credit where you got the stuff from if you make any changes, and don't sell it for money. Those things. Sure. The general rules that we apply when we consider something as being open source or not started this week in 1998, and because I'm a bit of a nerd and that's something that really appeals to me, that's something I wanted to make sure our friends and listeners were able to hear about. That open source, all these ideas, a lot of the ideas and things that we take for granted, whether it's being able to purchase multiple items at once, or whether it's just the idea of making things be open for people to download, tinker with, see, and not obfuscate the code. Stuff like that are things that didn't just they didn't just start spontaneously. These things had to be grown too. And even though I kind of meander a bit when we talk about gaming history, I kind of wanted to say that this is sort of the point. The point of game history is just to be like, hey, this is where these good ideas started. We wouldn't be where we are today without these things in the past. It's just
it's one of my favorite parts of it, dude, because I love it's nostalgia, man.
Yeah.
I love thinking back. By the way, that's an awesome shirt you're wearing. Is that to say Batman?
It does.
It's good stuff, man. I like that. Well, anyway, back on topic. Were you done with gaming history, or do we got some more?
Yeah,
stuff?
That's what I had for gaming history today.
Sweet. Now, someone in the chat said Galvatron says Final Fantasy is so named because it was Squaresoft's last chance at financial survival. If it had failed, Squaresoft would have closed shop. Did you know that, Mac?
Yes, I did.
See, I didn't, so I learned something else new today. The more you know. Fantastic. Well, kids, it's time for our next segment. A segment we like to call Topic of the Week, where we talk about something that's relevant in gaming history today and give our thoughts on it. Now, this is a console-heavy story, Mac, but I'm still going to want your opinion as a PC gamer. This is actually written by Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. If you follow gaming, you know that he is one of the best journalists as far as someone who does pure gaming journalism. Now, there's people like us who what we really do is we do commentary and content creation and we entertain you. But this gentleman is actually going out interviewing people, getting the inside scoop and getting insider information. So I want to give him credit where credit is due. So his story his article that he wrote today says, a recent online rumor got people buzzing about a possible 2018 release of the PlayStation 5, but that's probably not going to happen. In fact, from what we've heard, the next PlayStation is still a ways away. It may not arrive until 2020. It's been nearly 5 years since the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One launched, which has triggered bouts of nervousness and excitement among video game fans who want to know when they'll have to start hoarding pennies for a new generation of consoles. The PS4 launched 7 years after the PS3, the Xbox One 8 years after the Xbox 360. It's not unreasonable to be thinking about the next generation. We don't have a concrete answer just yet, but we have been asking around, and what we've heard is a whole lot of uncertainty. So he goes on to say that he's spoken with a lot of game developers, and that he talked to a couple people specifically who are familiar with plans for the new console. They told him that the next PlayStation is unlikely to release in 2019, let alone 2018, although they were careful to be clear that these plans are always shifting. So he said, and there's a quote here that says, on a multi-year project, a lot can happen to shift schedules both forward and backward, one person said. At some point, Sony's probably looked at every possible date. So here's my thing. Here's what I want to know in the chat. Are we ready for a PlayStation 5 by 2020? Is it something you're looking forward to? And is it something you would purchase? And Mac, I have two questions for you. The first question is, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, if you were to jump into a new console, which company is going to get your money? That's the first question I have for you.
Okay, so answer to the first question.
And it can't be none of them, Mac. It can't be none of them. It can't be that you would buy a new PC and upgrade your graphics card. Because I want to know if you got a console, which one it would be.
You know me too well, Mr. Nice Guy.
People want to know.
Probably Sony. Reason being is that Microsoft is fine and all, but if I was going to hop into consoles, I'd probably go for Sony. They've got really good exclusives.
They do. The Last of Us, Infamous, so many. Uncharted. There's just more than can be named. Ratchet and Clank. And,
okay, other games. Come on, Mr. Nice Guy. What are your other questions?
My other questions, I'm sorry. Also, we can't forget Mrs. Mac loves Crash Bandicoot. So
she does.
That'd be fun for PlayStation if you got that. My other question is, what features need to be added to a console to make you jump in? Because ultimately, man, here's my thing. I don't think that the PC really has that many features that the consoles don't. But for some reason, you're really into PC stuff when you could really be into console stuff and play video games with me on the console. So I'm just curious what it would take, man, to get PC gamers to come over to the master race of consoles.
Honestly, most of the reason why I stick with PC is the utility. Because I can do so much more with the PC than I can do with the console. If that utility wasn't there, if basically a PC was just another console, I probably wouldn't be as into or in with PCs as I am. That being said, what consoles need to do in order to get me to jump in is honestly lower prices. I need to feel, or I need to be richer. So, I guess the moral of the story is if you guys want Mac to get into more consoles, just send that money on over. Because I need to feel like it's a not quite an impulse buy to get games, but $60 for a game, it's a little much for me. $50, $60, that's a little bit much. If games were closer to 15, I would be much more into that. And if the consoles themselves were only around $200, $150, yeah, I'd be sold.
And that's a valid point because there's a lot of quality games that are in the $15 to $25 range. I'm being serious when I say that. Now, to be fair, most of them are indies, but there's a lot of good stuff in that space. In fact, I'm thinking about picking up Shovel Knight in the near future. So, so that was my question: is which one would you pick? So Mac would be a Sony guy, and he'd want it to be cheaper. So, and I wanted to know in the chat what you guys think. Here's my opinion. I feel like I just bought the PS4. You know what I mean? I feel like I just got it, and I really did get it when it came out, but it just doesn't seem like it's been long enough for a new generation of consoles to come out. I don't really know many people, at least in my age range, who have time to play all the awesome stuff that comes out. So I'm going to have a backlog on PS4 for a long time of stuff that I just want to play. I haven't even purchased Horizon Zero Dawn yet. I have not even had time to play it. And it was a Game of the Year candidate last year. So, I mean, there's so much stuff I have to go back and do. There's still Monster Hunter. There's just too much. So a PS5, one of the first times in my purchasing of gaming consoles, if a PS5 released tomorrow, I would honestly just wait to get it because I still have so much stuff to do on the PS4 and I haven't had time to complete it. So that's where I'm at with it. Mac, that's our topic of the week, man. Back over to you, buddy.
All right. Well, now, as you know, we like to take a look, or at least I like to take a look at some of the games that are being crowdfunded right now and see if there's something that speaks to me, speaks to us, speaks to you that we can all, kind of get behind. We like your participation in this, where we enjoy you giving us your opinion in the chat by saying whether or not you think this should be kicked out of here because it's garbage or kickstarted. Hence the name of the section of the segment, Kick or Kickstart. And this one is a wonderful one. I'm going to post a link in the chat for those of you who are here live to take a peek. And otherwise, Mr. Nice Guy and I are going to talk about it.
That's right.
So in the spirit of re-releases, this is a missed 25th anniversary collection of Myst, Riven, the sequel to Myst, Myst 3 Exile, Myst 4 Revelation, Myst 5 End of Ages, Uru Complete Chronicles, and Real Myst Masterpiece Edition. This has all of the Myst games, and it's being sold as a collection. Now, if you're not into doing the whole, backing this Kickstarter, which has like 40 days left to go, but is already over its, 100% mark, it went fast, then you can certainly purchase these when they get released as a bundle on Steam or goodoldgames.com. And you'd be fine. They do have the option of buying a special, sort of 25th anniversary, collector's box that they come in, that's styled to look like the books from the Myst series. So that's definitely cool. But one thing I want to note, and what makes this just a little bit better than a straight up re-release, is that these are supposed to be remastered in such a way as to be most compatible with newer systems. Now, I don't have issues with compatibility because I've got this old laptop that if I have old Windows, old DOS games that I want to play that struggle on newer PCs, I just pull the laptop down, install it, and then, I take the video out from that laptop, run it through my capture card, and that's how I stream it. I had to do that. Basically, I had to do that for the X-Wing games and the TIE Fighter games because even though they can play on a console like on a current gen PC, for whatever reason, they never seem to be able to stream ever. So in order to actually make it work, I had to use that, just as an aside. But that being said, these are supposed to have very good compatibility, be made exactly for that. So, anyway, here we are, Myst 25th Anniversary Collection. If you're looking to get those, 7 games, then the buy-in price is $49 US. It's supposed to be released in August, end of August, beginning of September of this year, so not too far, comparatively speaking, to be released. But this has all of the licenses, and yeah, there we go. I have to admit, I'm a huge fan of the Myst series. It's wonderful stuff, and I really like it. The logic or illogic of the puzzles sometimes is fun, but yeah.
Is it like Portal, or because I've honestly never played it?
Well, it's kind of semi-Portal-ish in the sense that it's first person, but it's a bit more point and click. Yeah, it's a lot more point and click. It's absolutely 100% point and click style. First person point and click. But so you click in an area and then you move from spot A to spot B. And then you're looking at the graphics. Back in the day, they had been pre-rendered, the scenes. Yep. So you would move basically from room to room, and it would just be, moving from one thing to another, and you could look around and be like, okay, I want to go over there, and then you'd go there, you'd pick up things and so on. But yeah, it's definitely unique. I think one thing to be said about the Myst series is that it was one of the ones to really nail the whole unfolding a narrative through the environment. Is really, really good at that. It unfolded this huge narrative around the environment in which you were, and it was beautiful.
So I'm going to give you my opinion just real quick. I know nothing about Myst. And I know a lot about video games. Now, granted, there are games that I've missed and games that I don't know about, but the fact that there are 7 of these and I've never really heard of the series makes me want to say kick it.
Okay.
Because not that everyone is like me, Mac. I'm not that conceited. I'm a little conceited, but not that conceited to think that. But the fact that someone like myself, who I consider to be a hardcore gamer, is not super familiar with this makes me wonder how much... Well, and here's the thing. It makes me wonder how much desire there is to have this remastered. But they've also raised almost $500,000. So, there's obviously a demand, but it's just not for me, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, well, who knows? Maybe when I come to visit next, I'll bring some Myst games along, and I can break you in.
I've never heard of this, man. It must be big if they have $500,000.
So. It is classic. I mean, Myst 3 even had a release on original Xbox. But this was, but these were, and Pazzy got there before me. But this was one of the first games to really be to really take advantage of CD drives and CD-ROMs. So that's kind of what they needed to do in order to get these kind of top of the line graphics at the time. Anyway, it was good stuff, Mr. Nice Guy. When you play it, I think you'll see why it was a big sensation among PC gamers.
Cool.
But I'm on the fence about Kickstartering it because, as I understand it, it'll be the same price, to get it later as it will be for kickstarting it. The only thing that's 100% Kickstarter exclusive is the sort of the exclusive mist box that it comes in. So I'm on the fence, but I'll say kickstart it because I think it's worth the asking price. So yeah, that's what I had for kick or kickstart today, Mr. Nice Guy.
Nice, and feel free to vote in the chat and let us know what you guys think as far as if you think it should be kicked or kickstarted. And we will move on to our next segment. Wow, we're running late today, and that's totally okay. This is my favorite segment of the show. It's the main event in my mind. It's called the Dummy of the Week, where I talk about someone who did something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them. Now, today's story comes from abc13.com. This took place actually today. This is a very new story. And I came up clutch, Mac, because I had another news story. This one, it wasn't as funny. This one's way better. This took place in Fresno, Texas. It says a Houston man is in legal hot water after allegedly grabbing his son's youth football teammate by the neck and slamming him against a wall. Before this alleged assault, Byron Mathis was already on deferred adjudication for choking a family member and punching his then-girlfriend's 14-year-old child years ago. So clearly this guy has some problems and probably shouldn't be allowed anywhere near his son's football team. Let's read on. It says he's a father of two, also strange, and was previously very active with the Fresno Gators football team, which is why some parents are so concerned. On Tuesday night, the Fresno Gators president and coach said Mathis is, quote, no longer around the team or associated with the team, unquote. Mathis didn't have much to say in probable cause court on Tuesday, facing a judge on injury to a child charges stemming from a November 2017 hotel party. Now, here's what happened. It says his son's youth football team was having a birthday party for one of the players at the Embassy Suites Hotel near the Galleria. According to court documents, Mathis's son and a teammate got into it over a video game controller. Hair was pulled and Mathis's son got kicked. What do you guys think happened next? Let's find out. It says from there, Mathis is accused of grabbing the teammate by the neck, choking and slamming him against a wall. Quote, first of all, he had no right touching him whatsoever, parent Liz Gonzalez said. If he saw there was an issue, something should have been hollered out. I mean, I've had situations where somebody is like, hey, stop that or something. That would have worked, This dude went straight to choking people. He's like the equivalent of a Ferrari. He went 0 to 60 real quick. There's no reason to ever choke a child. Now, how old do you guys think the kid was? Let's find out. It says the 10-year-old victim said when Mathis slammed him against the wall, he could not breathe and felt the back of his head hurting and tingling. This guy needs to be locked up. My kids have friends over and sometimes they argue. I would never put my hand on another kid in violence. That's terrible. It's terrible, Mac. Over a video game controller? This is insane. The person who wrote the article says, I went by Mathis's mother's home to see if they wanted to discuss the allegations, but no one answered. His wife told me via text she didn't want to be involved. Gonzalez doesn't know if Mathis's past trouble with the law indicates a bigger anger problem. Yeah, it definitely does, because he punched a 14-year-old and then he choked a 10-year-old, so obviously this guy has a bigger problem. The quote says, it upsets me to think something like this could happen, Gonzalez says. His bond was set at $35,000. I think this dude is crazy. I think once you choke one kid, you should not be allowed around kids anymore. And I think the football coach is stupid for allowing him to be around the team. Also, I think it's stupid that they had a 10-year-old, 14-year-old's birthday party at a hotel. I think that's really strange. And I think it's weird that this kid's dad is even allowed around the team. I said that once already. That's what I think, Mac. Do you have anything you want to add? Or I feel like it's all common sense. at this point. There's not a lot else we could say. So that's been our dummy of the week. And Mac, back over to you.
Well, I sometimes I don't know how to follow the dummies of the week, but we do follow them up with our little segment I like to call Legalese.
Legalese.
And well, sometimes I find myself in the position of commenting on the poor decisions of those, and maybe sometimes offering some good legal advice, or at least marginal legal advice. For the most part, the focus of this section is about how laws, either historically or currently, are shaping the way that we are going to have and consume our video games. And I've got sort of one that I don't have so much a single thing to pinpoint on, but rather just to express a sort of general trend. It's an idea that I've had kind of ruminating for a little while, but something that I watched, a video I watched not that long ago by Ross Scott, in case you're familiar with his content on YouTube. He encapsulated a bunch of various ideas. You know how you have that, Mr. Nice Guy? You have an idea, you're thinking about it, you're trying to do this. I'm sure this happens a lot in comedy, and then you see somebody and they do it, they hit your idea perfect, and probably better than you would have put it together yourself.
I've never seen that, because I'm brilliant, Mac. No, okay, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. That can happen. Yeah, parallel thinking, it can happen.
Well, we definitely had one of those. And so there's this idea in my mind, and call it me being old-fashioned, but there's this idea that if I bought a game, if I paid for a video game, the minimum expectation I have is I don't have an expectation for like permanent updates. I don't have an expectation of permanent company support. I don't have an expectation of like Blizzard releasing patches for Diablo 2 15 years after it was initially released, type of things. But I do have the expectation that I am able to play the game.
Of course.
I mean, and that's pretty obvious and easy when I'm talking about a Nintendo, an NES, where I pop the cartridge in and it still works. But as something that's been kind of a problem is that as we've moved closer and closer toward online-only games, or games that, while maybe they aren't like, for example, an MMO that has to be played online, there is no offline component of an MMO. Not even that, there are plenty of games that have an offline component, that the game could be entirely offline, but yet it is required to connect to servers in order to be run. Games like this do exist.
Yeah, they absolutely do. NBA 2K.
And that is, in my opinion, and always has been, kind of a travesty, because support ends on that side. And again, I don't expect continued 100% support, but I do expect that I can play the game. But the problem is, Mr. Nice Guy, once that server goes down, you can no longer play the game. It does not work. So in that spirit of things, I'm not the only one who's thought that it's a little ridiculous to say, if I bought the game, the very least that I expect is to be able to actually play the game. But interestingly, the ESA kind of disagrees. In a 70 page comment that they offered a little while back, specifically on Title 17 USC 1201, in case you want to look it up. It was after an exemption was made to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to allow abandoned software, video games for abandoned software, specifically those that require that server communication, that allowed for an exemption so that you could allow for these games to be run by making them communicate with another server or with a different server that had the things on it. So presumably, if you want to play NBA 2K, well, which 2K can't you play anymore, Mr. Nice Guy?
I think 14.
Okay, so if you want to play NBA 2K14, you can get together with your buddies, you can have a server that's actually open, and then you can have that work. Now, that might be a lot easier said than done, but the law would not come down on you for actually doing that. Now, when they took issue with this, they issued a 70-page thing about why this is bad and why this shouldn't be done. That really is kind of this crazy exercise in almost doublespeak. And I encourage you, if you've got some spare time, read over it and just sort of appreciate what kinds of crazy and ridiculous stuff they say. Like, it's hard to even know where to start, but like there's this aspect where it's like, you don't need to be able to do this because game developers are going to continue to release games so that, and re-release these games so that you'll still be able to play them, because that's how our game companies, because the ESA is sort of a video game makers union, if you will. This is how we make our money. So of course we're going to still give re-releases of these games and allow you to consume these old games. That's otherwise how would we make money? But I mean, I could name 10 to 20 different games that isn't true. And I mean, and I'm talking about even games that were released like 2 years ago that no longer work. Yes, lobbying group. Thanks, Galvatron. Much appreciated. But anyway, keeping in mind that for me, the minimum that I think it's reasonable to say if I bought it, I should be able to play it today, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, whatever it takes, I should still be able to play the game that I paid for. Pay once, play forever, more or less. That's my sort of minimum. However, there are differences of opinion, no matter how ridiculous they may be. I say this as our legalese today, even though it doesn't really have much legal speak involved, any real lawyer talk. But just in general, I kind of wanted to throw out there that not everybody really believes, Mr. Nice Guy, that if you buy a game, you should be able to play it. And when you kind of lose sight of that, we get a lot of, I wouldn't call it chicanery, but we get a lot of craziness.
Chicanery sounds like the perfect word, actually.
Okay, we get this chicanery from the ESA where under the guise of saying something perfectly reasonable, all it takes is just this cursory sort of, from someone. And that's the thing. These comments often don't go to people who know what video games are or for even know that NBA 2K14 you can't play anymore. But we know better. So I see stuff like that, Mr. Nice Guy, and it just makes my blood boil.
It really grinds my gears, man.
It really grinds my gears. So anyway, that's where I'll leave Legalese for today. Again, I encourage you to read over the ESA's long comment, is what it's called. The actual title, the long comment regarding a proposed exemption under 17 USC 1201. If you're in for a laugh, or if you're interested in a laugh, although maybe it's a little less of a laugh and a little bit more one of those you laugh to stop from crying type situations when you read what it is that that the game industry lobbying group really wants the end game to be. And honestly, that's kind of part of what boils my blood so much about it, where it's like, you show your hand so obviously what your goal in this is, and it is so at odds with what the arrangement should be, needs to be. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
That was fantastic, sincerely. Mac, you need your own show, man. The Mac
This isn't
Minute.
my show?
Huh?
This isn't my show?
It's both of our show.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You're the star. Don't get me wrong.
No, you're
I'm
the
the
star,
sidekick.
Mr. Nice Guy.
I'm
No. Sidekick definitely here. See, you've got all that suaveness. I mean, I just can't compete.
We're a good team. Well, kids, that has been our show. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 64 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I'm going to start doing announcements before our last segment now. We will be back next week here on twitch.tv/Two Nerds in a Pod, 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain. But before we go, we like to do one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the things we've been watching, the games we've been playing. Mac, you want to lead us off? Oh, and let us know in the chat the stuff you've been watching and playing as well. Mac, it's all you.
All right. As for playing, I've been cheating on you, Mr. Nice Guy. My next door neighbor and I have been playing Halo. I know that was our game. I know that was our game, but we beat it recently on Heroic and are now working through on Legendary, and I feel like there is a huge bump in difficulty between Heroic and Legendary on the first Halo.
I pray that you don't complete it.
Let's see, that's kind of all the video game that I've had time for lately. As for watching, Mrs. the Mac and I rewatched all through Better Call Saul, seasons 1, 2, and 3.
Nice.
And yeah, now that The Expanse season 3 is going to be coming out, I'm sure we'll be watching that too. So that's it for me.
Nice. So literally right before we started doing this, I was watching a movie with the wifey. It's called The Greatest Showman, which is typically not my type of movie, but I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie. It was a really, really good movie. Mac, have you heard of this?
Which one?
The Greatest Showman. Has your boy Wolverine.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It just came out today. I don't think it's your type of movie. I'm not going to say that it is. And I didn't think it'd be mine either, but I sincerely enjoyed it. It was a really good movie. So I'd recommend that if you like it. It's not nerdy, but it was solid. What else? I did start watching season 3 of Better Call Saul because I never finished it when it was on TV. Also still watching Suits with the wife. As a side note, I did see that Black Panther is going to be on Blu-ray next month, which I think is pretty quick. I don't think stuff usually comes to Blu-ray that quickly. I think it's the 15th of May is when it comes out, so I'm definitely picking that bad boy up. Mac, have you seen Black Panther?
You know it, man. I watched it twice in theaters. Black Panther's grossed more than is the second highest grossing film of all time, I believe.
What's the first? Like Titanic or something?
Gone with the Wind? I don't know. I know by ticket sales, Gone with the Wind is like number one. But then again, it cost exactly. Yeah. I don't know what the number one is, but I know Black Panther. I believe Black Panther beat out Titanic for the number 2 spot. So, which is exciting stuff. Yeah, I loved the heck out of Black Panther.
Yeah, man. Well, cool. So that's what I've been watching. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, Runaways on Hulu, man. I love the Runaways. Loving it. As far as games I've been playing, I did finally finish Celeste. And I loved it. Just a beautiful game. Now, the B-sides and the C-sides are a totally new game. So you say you finished it, but really there's so much more content. So I have a ways to go. I think I had 80 strawberries on my first playthrough, about 2,500 deaths. So, and that's pretty much it. Playing stuff with the kids, that's pretty much what I've been watching and playing. Mac, do you want to check out the chat and see what our people have been watching?
When you get to the point that you need to get those all 200 strawberries, let me know. I'll help you out.
Is that how you unlock the C-sides?
No, you have to beat all the B-sides in order to unlock the C-sides.
You don't have to collect tapes, they automatically unlock?
Nope. Tapes to unlock the B-sides. Beat all the B-sides to unlock the C-sides.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You collect the B-sides and then just beat the B-sides to get the C-sides. Got it.
Yep. So let's see. We've got, for games, we've got some Overwatch, some Game Boy Advanced games, some Doom 2016 with the 4K patch, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, and Res Infinite. For watching some Last Jedi in 4K, Galvatron, always got to mention that 4K. Greatest Showman, of course, some comments on that. But yeah, so that's what we got. And some Magic the Gathering Oh, IRL. Nice. Some IRL Magic the Gathering. But that's what we've got. So thanks everybody for chiming in and letting us know. We're always looking for, we're always looking for new things. What are we going to watch next? What are we going to play next? So your suggestions, very helpful.
Yeah, so we'll be back next week. Same bat place, same bat time, same bat rhymes. Thanks for tuning in, deuces. Keep it nerdy. We love y'all. See ya.